Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our presentation. I'll be presenting about the remuneration policy and strategy. Will be presented. My name is P. Topiso. My other four colleagues is Mr. Diego, Ms. Maneli, Mr. Gwai, and Ms. Gabaye. We will be introducing the remuneration policy and strategy. I'm going to define what is remuneration. Remuneration includes all forms of payments, both financial and non-financial reward. Financial reward is by payment, cash, and non-financial reward can be a vacation or gift from the company that an employee received for the service that she or he provides for the employee. For example, this is an example that we made. Tabo works as an HR administrator for the ZZ counseling company. Her remuneration is calculated on an annual basis and is fixed on 120, and therefore his monthly salary for 12 months is 10,000. The purpose of remuneration. The purpose of remuneration is to attract talent. In most companies, they have good remuneration policies. They have good remuneration. It can include medical aid, it can include bursaries for kids, it can include a package that is very good. It can be something that will attract employees from outside to come and work for our company. The next one is to retain talent employees. To retain talent employees is to the employees that are already working at the organization, for them not to go and look for jobs in other places. You retain them, you give them, you give them, you take them to courses, you give them workshops, you give them packages that will make them to stay at the organization. Motivated talent, you motivate your talent. As a manager, you have to motivate your talent, your talented employees. It can be by a non-financial reward. And most of the time, our people are not actually always looking for a financial reward. Non-financial rewards are also good to reward talent employees. And some of the remunerations are required by law. And the other one is to ensure efficiency. Ensure efficiency is the level of performance of your employees and how you measure the employees at the organization. The next slide is remuneration policy and strategy. What is remuneration policy and strategy? Remuneration policy is a document that outlines guidelines to be followed in determining suitable remuneration packages. That by law, as most companies, we have to follow guidelines. We have to follow procedures, how you do remunerations. And then a remuneration strategy defines what an organization wants to do in the long term, achieve certain organization objectives. In some organizations, the remuneration strategy goes aligned with the organization strategy. The purpose of remuneration strategy is to inform all employees of the direction of the organization aims to follow in regards to remuneration. Because if an organization does not have a remuneration strategy, it won't be able to budget for the employees. So the employees must know the purpose of the remuneration policy and of the remuneration structures. Thank you very much. Klaus, my next colleague, will continue. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mongezi Keko. I'll be taking you through to the example of remuneration strategy. We've got ZZ Consulting Company, whereby their strategy, the remuneration strategy is to attract, retain, and motivate employees in order to achieve the objectives of the organization. And also offering cumulative short-term and long-term incentives. So what we mean by short-term incentives is when then the employees or the talent gets an annual bonus every month. And when we talk about long-term incentives, is we talk about equity or shares within the company. And then also offering bonuses that are orientated and productivity improvement. So which means when we talk about productivity improvement, whereby then sometimes the employer will offer vouchers to the employees in order for them to make their productivity on a monthly basis. And then we've also got factors which are influencing remuneration policy and strategy. We've got external factors and also internal factors. Within the external factors, we've got status of the labor market, economic conditions, government influences, and union influences. So which means when we talk about labor market is the employment rate within the labor market. Economic condition also says the same thing, and then government influences as to how government is able to then attract or make jobs available within the labor market. And then also union influences, if then the unions are able to fight for their employees. And then internal factors is organizational strategy and remuneration budget. So if then they're able to then retain or be able to employ talent based on their budget of their company. And we've got salary structure. A salary structure can be defined as a system that employers use to determine Salary structure can be used to define a system that employers use to determine an employer's compensation. So which means when it says determine the employer's compensation is to depending on the experience and the qualification of each talent, so they're able to determine how much they can offer that person. A standard salary structure considers things like merit, length of employment, and pay compared to similar positions. So that means then, depending how long has the person been working within the company, so which means then every year then the person is able to get an annual increase. But then sometimes you get someone that is new in the company, which means they all can be able to get the same salary as the person that has been working within the company for a longest time. There are three main types of salary structure, which with structured businesses, namely is a traditional, broadband, and market-based salary structure.
Good evening. I'm Nomsa Maleli. I'll be speaking about firstly two remuneration theories, namely the equity theory as well as the expectancy theory. When we talk about the equity theory, it states that the employees are strongly motivated to maintain a balance between what they perceive as their input or contributions and their rewards, right? If the employee feels he or she is not being fairly paid for the amount of work they do, that could result in lower productivity, increased turnover, as well as a high absenteeism rate, right? So when inequity is perceived, an employee will reduce effort or they resign. That means that the person is not motivated anymore, so they do less because they know at the end that they don't benefit anything, right? So employees judge fairness by multiple comparisons. So there are a lot of things that the employee takes into consideration when they judge the fairness, right? So comparing to jobs similar to their own, right? So that means now they take this as individuals, okay? So comparing their job to others at the same employer. So that then refers to internal equity within the organization. And also comparing their jobs, the job pay against external pay levels. So now they look at what they receive within the organization versus to what they could have expected outside. So in essence, there should be equity or a uniformity in the pay structure of all the individuals so that to keep the employees motivated, right? Then we talk about the expectancy theory. The word itself, expectancy, is what an individual would expect because of what they give and what the individual must gain, right? So the expectancy theory predicts that one's level of motivation depends on the attractiveness of the rewards sought and the probability of obtaining that, right? So this then proposes then an individual will behave or the individual acts in a certain way because of how they are motivated, and of course that gives them a way of behaving, right? So then the theory holds that employees should exert greater work effort if they have reason to expect that it will result in reward that is valued. Then, to motivate this effort, the value of any monetary reward should be attractive. And I know that when we talk about money, some people feel is for that. As I was saying, to motivate this effort, the value of any monetary reward should be attractive, right? So also employees also must believe that good performance is valued by the employer and will result in receiving the reward, right? So suggestion is that individuals are motivated to perform if they know that their extra performance is recognized and rewarded, right? Everyone wants to be recognized, whether it is in monetary value or any kind of recognition within the organization. So people working harder when they believe the added effort will help them achieve a goal or will be rewarded. Because an individual is motivated more knowing that what the end result is going to be, right? Then I'm just going to briefly go through the remuneration policy contents. So firstly, we talk about the remuneration philosophy. So this is to orientate the reader immediately as to why the policy exists. So that is just so straightforward. So why does a remuneration policy? What is the purpose of it within the organization or within any type of work space? And then also the key principles guiding behaviors in the implementation of the policy. And lastly, the remuneration policy scope outlines to which employees working for the organization, whether permanently employed or on a contract basis, policy is applicable. So this scope then also just underlines how an individual, whether they are permanent or not permanent, how they are to be treated in the organization. Thank you.
My name is Gosgumulebwai. I will take you through to 3 slides here. The first slide is this one, remuneration policy contents, and then the others. Now, the remuneration policy contents, there are these the remuneration components. I cannot explain what is remuneration policy contents because my colleagues or my group members explained. Now, I can break down the remuneration. When we talk of remuneration, there are 3 types of remuneration. We can talk about the salary, the hour, and the commission. But here, let us go through to this remuneration component and versus eligibility. Now, the guaranteed pay. All permanent employees in the eligibility, excluding the employees who are on a commission-based remuneration structure. Here, the guaranteed pay, who could be remunerated here? Let us talk about the 13th check on the guaranteed pay. Those who work for government, there's 13th check here. But even the 13th check depends to those are permanent, not if those are working or who are on a commission basis. Now let's go to the variable pay. The variable pay, here we pay a person based on a performance. not all employees. We can pay all employees, but we can exclude who are those participants of sales incentives or commission-based remuneration structures. There is also this thing of what is this? The variable pay, the long term. The long term, we're talking about the shares and the equity. When we're talking about the variable pay, the long term. Now let's go to the employee benefits and allowances. The employee benefits and allowances, we can talk about those. The employee benefits and allowances. All permanent employees benefits. Okay, as I say, employee benefits and allowance. We're talking about the health insurance, the medical and family leave, the disability insurance, the wellness program. Let's go to the next slides. The purpose of the guaranteed pay. The purpose of the guaranteed pay is to attract and retain the best talent with market pay. I can say here, in the purpose of the guaranteed pay, why we make this as guaranteed pay is just because we want to avoid the labor turnover. ZZ consultants provide a flexible structure of benefits which can be tailor-made within limits for individual employees, which are as follows: the pension, the medical aid, the bursaries for employees and children, car allowance. Those we provide this because we want to retain the employees, not to just to keep the employees working in this organization. Now, the variable pay. Let's talk about the short-term and long-term incentives. The short-term incentive, the purpose of short-term incentive is to reward individuals annually for achieving predetermined targets. I can say it's a once-off payment made for just to give somebody, to motivate a person to do more. And then the high performance culture where achievement of business and individual goals is rewarded and promoted within the organization. It is also a once-off thing. If we see we reach the target, we can get promoted or rewarded for the work they've done. I thank you. Okay, variable pay, short-term and long-term incentives. Long-term incentive. The purpose of long-term incentives is to attract, motivate, and reward senior management, because we don't want any movement. We don't want the employees to leave the organization. We have to keep them, to retain them in the organization. That is why we give them these long-term incentives. Now, the long-term incentives are awarded based on the company's multi-year targets. When let's say if we reach the targets, we made the target, now we can give maybe the promotion or give the employees the bonuses. I think.
Something that's wasn't there, I never discussed. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Noputula. I'll be taking you through employee benefits and allowances slides. The purpose of ZZ Consultants employee benefits and allowances is to increase employee value proposition. What's the meaning of employee value proposition? Is basically what the employee, it basically, my apologies, as I was saying, The meaning of employee value proposition, it is defined as a set of, this is a unique set of associations and offerings provided by an organization in return for the skills, capabilities, and experiences an employee brings to the organization. The next one is the company aims to provide market-related employee benefits and allowances, such as medical aid benefits, pension and life insurance, car and petrol, and cell phone allowances, house allowances. There are bursaries also that are not listed here, bursaries and training and development. So I'm going to take you through and explain what medical aid benefit means. Medical aid benefits, they are basically they are the benefits that covers the day-to-day benefits where the employee can get medication over-counter at pharmacies, and it also consists of hospital covers, dental care, and also optometrist. The second one is pension and life insurance. Pension and life insurance, this is the pension benefit when the employees resign or they retire. And the third one is car and petrol and cell phone allowances. This is basically an allowance, a benefit that ensures eligible employees receive vehicles and cell phone allowances to perform their jobs. This is basically the benefit that allows the eligible employees to receive trade-off tools like vehicles and cell phone allowances, so that in order to perform their jobs. And the third one is the fourth one is house allowances. This is a benefit where permanently employed employees who have bought houses or flats will benefit from housing allowances provided by the company. Then we go into the next slide. The next slide is the remuneration policy contents. This is basically what remuneration policy contains. The first point is retention strategy, whereby a remuneration contribution to promoting employee retention. This is a remuneration contribution to promote employee retention, which means that all right, as I was saying, the remuneration contribution to promoting employee retention means it's a plan that the organizations creates and use to reduce the turnover and to foster employee engagement. That is basically the retention strategy. And then the second one is linked to performance system. A remuneration linked to performance employee. This is a remuneration linked to employee performance, which means that the company implements short-term incentives that are tied to individual performance to motivate employees. For example, end of the year, if maybe a manager performs very well, they're getting rewarded according to their performance and according to the productivity that they have contributed to the organization. And then the third one is the remuneration adjustment and reviews, which basically means how remuneration will be reviewed and adjusted. Which means that annually, companies, maybe in November, the remuneration will be reviewed, and if there is a need for adjustment or increase, such will be effective the following year, which is the 1st of January. Then the other one is document control inversions, which is the person responsible for crafting and approval of the remuneration policies. In companies, the people that are are responsible for the crafting and approval of remunerations is the HR manager. They are responsible for the remuneration policy, and the CEO, they are responsible for the strategy of the company. Then the last one is the remuneration governance. These are guidelines to ensure that remuneration follow good corporate governance and principles. That basically means that organizations need to ensure that the implementations of remuneration policies and strategies are in line with the corporate governance principles. Thank you so much. That will be the end of my part, and thank you so much.